Welcome to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Colin.
And I'm David.
Hey everyone, so we're going to talk about Hawkeye Episode 3 tonight, which is entitled Echoes. As always, we will go through our spoiler-free thoughts about the episode, and then we'll jump into full spoiler discussion and recap of the episode. Before we do that, I'm going to read a quick summary, spoiler-free summary, given to us by Disney about the episode. The summary is, after escaping a new threat, Clint and Kate joined forces against an expanding criminal conspiracy. So, Colin, what did you think of this episode? Spoiler-free, of course.
I think that this episode was pretty solid in terms of I think a lot of it was actually you saw in the trailer itself. I'm not going to reveal which part of the trailers from the previews and things like that you saw, but it was a very significant part of it. It was just as compelling as it was in the trailers. Overall, I think it left you wanting more, and you kind of got this feeling that, you have one episode, but last week you had two episodes, and it was great to have two episodes. You wonder, what if we get two episodes instead of just one all the time? But they didn't do it this way, so they're just going to go back to the one episode per week, and, again, leaves you kind of hanging by a thread to kind of see what else is going to happen throughout the whole series. So, we're halfway through right now. There's still a lot of things that are unresolved. And I think overall pretty solid continuing of what happened in the first two episodes.
Okay. David. You lost David? Did we lose David?
Is David there still? I think we lost him. Did he step out?
David,
Wait,
there.
hold on.
David,
Yeah. Oh, you're on mute, David. You may be on mute.
Sorry. My kid fell backwards on the couch.
Oh, wow, yeah.
She's fine, but sorry about that.
No worries.
No worries. Yeah.
Go ahead, David. You got the floor. What did you think of the episode?
I like the fact that we get to know more of the character of Echo specifically. Because in episode 2, in the end, you see a girl touching the base of the speakers there. You're like wondering, who is this? But then when you think, but it gives a hint of who she is, because her name is Echo. But I like the fact that it shows more in depth of who she is, and gives a backdoor pilot of who she is as a person and how she grew up as, which is basically Echo, or Maya Lopez, is basically a born deaf girl who has an ability to mimic the area of her opponent's moves, and we see what her upbringing is. But she grew up in a special education, and she grew up in her father.
Spoiler free, of course.
Spoiler free, sorry. Basically, that we get to see who she is as a person, because if people don't know her from the comic book, she's a deaf Native American girl who has an upbringing being deaf and everything. But the one thing that we don't know too much about her yet, because we get to see who she is right now. So this is a big introduction of who she is in this episode, which I really enjoy about it, because people are wondering, who is this person? And this episode is spot on, just tells it right there. And I like the dialogue. We see a growing dialogue between Clint and Kate Bishop as they get to know each other and see how their skills are and everything. And not to mention that Clint is realizing the true potential of Kate. Despite that, she may sound cocky, but it actually has potential to become as good as an archer as she is.
Awesome. Yeah, so I like the episode as well. I definitely like the first part of the episode, the first two acts of the episode more than the last act of the episode. But as Colin said, a lot of the stuff that you see in the trailer actually shows up in this episode. So if you like the trailer as like a teaser of what's to come, a lot of that is in this episode, and also of course it's expanded a little bit as well because they don't show everything that was in that scene that's in the trailer inside of this episode. The third act kind of dragged for me, and I was thinking about this when I was talking to my wife about whether or not I can blame the directors or the writers on this, and I think I'm going to probably blame the writers on this. They probably should have spread out this a little bit. The third act is pretty much all exposition, so it kind of drags to a halt through the exposition parts, and the directors actually tried to work with that by changing the scenery through that exposition, but it's a lot of talking, and I feel like they should have broken that up a little bit. This was actually directed by Bert and Bertie, which I guess is a directing team, but it was written by Katrina, Mathewson, and Tanner Bean. So it's definitely a good episode. I don't think it's as strong, or maybe it wasn't as strong as the first two episodes, just because, like I said, the third act lags for me. But I definitely enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to what's going to come in the next couple weeks. We're at the halfway point now because there's only 6 episodes in this series. So I guess there are some questions that I have based upon what we saw, for people coming up that might be interesting, and we'll get into that when we talk about spoilers. But before we jump into spoilers, I will say, if you enjoy this conversation and you want to be part of conversations or not miss our conversations in the future, please like and subscribe. It's the only way that the algorithms or any of these platforms know that we exist. We are streaming right now live on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. So let's jump into the spoilers right now. Spoiler alert: if you haven't seen the episode, go see the episode, and then join us later on, because we're recording this live stream, so you can come back and join the conversation. So we start the episode with a flashback. The flashback is basically Maya's background, right? So we have a couple scenes. First, we have Maya in primary school, and she's trying to figure out what's going on. She's deaf, as David said in the spoiler-free part, and also we saw at the end of the last episode. She's deaf, and she's being thrown in the deep end with a bunch of kids who aren't deaf, and a teacher who isn't very considerate of the fact that she's deaf, because she's giving instructions and turning away from Maya. And Maya's just, we see in this, I think in this scene, we get a sense that she's set apart from everyone else, but also she's very smart, because she figures out what she needs to do, because the teacher comes over to her and kind of chastises her for not paying attention, but she's ahead of everyone else, because she just by watching everyone else, she was able to figure out what she was supposed to do, even though the teacher didn't actually tell her directly what she needed to do, which I appreciated them showing that. They showed that, and then they showed it in several scenes after this, how she's a very careful watcher of what's going on to compensate for the fact that she can't hear. So yeah.
I have because I'm an educator. This scene really resonated a lot, and also I empathize with what the teacher in this scene was experiencing, dealing with a group of young people in the room, and then also it's very funny because this type of exceptionalism from a student rarely does happen in reality. So I do want to give a caveat to that, because it does kind of speak in itself how the education system is structured in this country, and I'm assuming that this is based in the United States in the year 2007 in the Marvel universe as well. So even in the Marvel universe, the education system has things that can be let's just say, left more to be desired about. So it's very fascinating.
It's, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She definitely is exceptional, regardless of her deficits. Her she's exceptional, and we see that as we keep going on through her childhood. So we switch from this scene to the next scene, which is her with her father, and she's basically complaining a little bit, like about how she thought that the people in the class are going to be like her, and her father says, "Well, there's no one like you. You're very special." And we get a little bit here about him trying to mimic or tell her what the sound of like dragons and other things are. So this is a sweet like little scene showing their bond. And I think in this scene he also tells her that she's going to have to live between two worlds. So basically toughening her up, I guess. So the prelude part to this scene, the Act 1 stuff is very, very short. Then we switch to a scene where she is learning karate, and again we get a sense of her as an observer, right? She observes the boy and how he moves, and she uses that to defeat him later on. What I notice also here is we also see who is obviously the big boss who's going to show up in another episode. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Who's that? Who's does that look like Vincent D'Onofrio's arm to you guys?
David, you can chime in to because I do have some thoughts, but I want to make sure that David gets to chime in on this one.
I'm familiar with Echo's history a little bit. Her father, if most people don't know in the comic book, her father is basically an enforcer, mm-hmm. working for the Kingpin. So, and then, but when the scene where when she was learning the martial arts there, the father says your uncle will take you home. We don't know who this uncle is, mm-hmm. per se, and they even mentioned in the present day saying that do you know who's in charge and everything, and then it's mentioned about that her uncle will not be happy about it, but we don't know who it is.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that if people are not familiar with the comics, Echo's family used to work for the Kingpin, so it could be the Kingpin or some other middle guy between them. But we don't know for sure, though. I mean, everyone's like hoping that all the actors from the Netflix series would come in the MCU, but we don't know yet. But
yeah, so I feel like Vincent D'Onofrio has been like kind of coy about this over the last couple of weeks. He's like he doesn't do a lot on social media, and then he's like generally started talking about, I really love the Disney Plus stuff, and so I feel like he's kind of hinting at the fact that he's going to show up at some point. And this definitely looks like Vincent D'Onofrio's like arm and shoulder, but we don't. It might be Vincent D'Onofrio. It might be somebody else. But this definitely looks like a larger white dude, because Echo, Maya and her dad are Native American. So we will see. But they played coy with it the entire episode. So
yeah, it's fascinating because I think in the scene in which her uncle was in the bedroom with Maya. Was he in a tracksuit?
No. You mean her father was?
Oh, father. That was her father. Sorry.
Father, not uncle.
Sorry. Was he in a tracksuit or not?
I don't think he was in a tracksuit in the previous. You mean in the
in the bedroom,
yeah.
When she was talking with her about being in different worlds.
I don't know, because later on we see that he's part of the tracksuit mafia, but it doesn't look like in this scene that he's in a tracksuit. I think he's just wearing regular clothes. So maybe this is this definitely is earlier in her life, right? So maybe he joins the tracksuit mafia later on, because we see him in a tracksuit when she's closer to an adult. So maybe at this point, he's not, but like later on, maybe he is.
I see.
Yeah, because like if you look back in the flashback, we just see her upbringing as a kid, but then later on we flash forward a little bit, showing her as an adult. She was in a scene where she goes to the garage to visit her dad, and then happened to be ransacked by Ronin, who by chance happened to be wearing tracksuits. So yes, he happened to be part of the mafia years down the road after her childhood.
Yeah. So like as David said, after this we get a scene with first her again using her observational skills to beat this dude up when she's an adult, and then we get a scene after that where she goes to this garage and she happens upon Ronin, basically killing all these tracksuit mafia dudes. And this is when her dad is also in a tracksuit. So we see him in a tracksuit as when she's an adult. So maybe when she's a child, maybe he's not part of the tracksuit mafia yet. But yeah, so that's what I'm thinking.
Got it. Yeah, it's just I just think that you can definitely see some, as David had alluded to earlier in the non-spoiler part, where you get to see what the choices that Hawkeye / when he's Ronin, how he the consequences of those, and we've seen. In the MCU.
Yeah, I suspect there's a lot of people who would like to end Ronin for all the people he killed. He killed a lot of people over the 5 years during the blip. So he's got to protect his family. That's probably why he ran after the tracksuit in the first episode as well. He's got to shut that down because his family is at risk because of all the things that he did. And yeah, Maya is probably just the tip of the iceberg of people who would want to see him dead. Yeah. All right.
Definitely.
So after this scene, the death scene of her father, we jump to the present day, which is where we left off at the end of the last episode with Kate and Clint in this warehouse. So they have them on these machines. I think these are those machines that they put in outside of the grocery store. These
25 cents.
Yeah. That they for kids to entertain them. So you have this scene where they're basically just not really torturing them. They're just making fun, playing with them, and on these ponies, and then Maya gives. Sorry, not Maya. Kate gives one of the goons some advice about his girlfriend. Relationship advice. So then we cut to Maya coming in. She clocks, because she's observant. She's very observant that Clint has a hearing aid, and she assumes that he understands sign language. And quite frankly, he knows a couple words, but he's only hard of hearing, so he doesn't know that much. So she removes his binds because she at first empathizes with him, right? Because she thought that he was a fellow deaf person, and you can't really speak with your hands bind, right? So she takes the bindings off, and then when she figures out that he's kind of useless with sign language, her interpreter puts a binding back on. So I found that was interesting. I also like this actress does a lot with her face and her reactions. What I also found interesting in this scene is that when she's talking and Clint is talking to her, Clint speaks directly to her, not the interpreter. When she goes off and she gets angry, it's because Kate is talking to her interpreter and not talking to her, and she gets very upset about that. So I appreciated that little nuance there, because the interpreter is to help communication between them, but she's not the person. He's not the person who she should have been addressing. So I appreciated that little bit of nuance. So
definitely. Yeah, I think that this scene was probably one of my favorites in terms of just the back and forth and using sign language, and we saw that in Eternals as well. The use of American Sign Language as a form of dialogue, and to a great degree of sophistication and just nuance, like you said. So yeah, really good job in terms of being careful and also with a lot of care putting into this type of into this type of scenery.
Yeah, I also, so like this episode isn't so there are a couple things that you said there. I think now we have two deaf superheroes in the MCU, which is awesome. I mean, right now she's a villain. But everyone, if you watch our live stream from Friday a couple weeks ago, they're going to do an Echo show, and they don't give entire shows give entire shows to villains. At most, they're like anti-heroes. Like they're going to do an Agatha show, but I think she's going to probably be an anti-hero in that show. Echo's probably going to be a hero, or she's going to be an anti-hero at some point in the MCU. So we have Makari and we have her, and I also I appreciated this episode for this scene, all the scenes with Echo, and also the scene later on with Clint in the apartment. And so I'm not sure if you guys have watched the show, all the murders in the building, only murderers in the building with Selena Gomez and two comedy greats whose names are escaping me right now. But they did an entire show with from the perspective of like a deaf person, and that's probably the best thing I've seen in a couple years. This year, it was earlier this year, about like deaf representation, but this comes in second, because they did a really good scene, a very good touching scene later on, which we'll touch on later on with Clint Clint and Kate, and also all the stuff they did with Echo and how she's compensating in the beginning of this episode, and also right here was really good to me. So yeah.
Definitely.
So they have a conversation. Like I said, Echo kind of goes off on Kate because she's not paying attention to her, and she also thinks that she's lying. And I think in this part of the conversation, Clint also says that Ronan was killed by Black Widow, which she doesn't believe. She's like, it's very convenient that the person who killed him is also dead. So yeah. I mean, what he's saying is not necessarily wrong. Like, I assume that the Ronin persona died with Black Widow. Like her sacrifice is why he put down, so what he's saying is not wrong, as Obi-Wan would say, from a certain point of view.
Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
I mean, yeah. He did say that when she said, "Who is Ronan?" and Clint says he's dead because of Black Widow. Because technically, back in Avengers Endgame, when Natalia found Clint after all these years and found out who he is, and then take with her to go to the planet to get the Soul Stone, that's when Clint dropped and killed the Ronin persona right there, because he created the Ronin persona because he's like in the search for vengeance and answers, kind of like Batman in a way, because he's so lost, he's confused because ever since the blimp and lost his family, he has no purpose until in Endgame he found Natalia again, and then when after her sacrifice to him and for his family, he felt there's no point of continuing on as Ronin. Hence, he's told her he's dead. So
yeah,
but the thing is that, as you pointed out before, that she thinks that she thinks that he's lying, but at the same time he's not lying. It's actually true. It's just that
from a certain point of view.
For you, as Obi-Wan would say.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I think that she just wants answers. She's also looking for vengeance herself because her dad's dead by Ronin. So he wants to find out who is the person who wore it, because she thought it was Cade. He thought it was Clint. He thought maybe someone else wearing it. She just want to find the real person who murdered her dad. And we all know it's Clint, but he doesn't want to say it. The Clint doesn't want to say it because he's protecting his family. So it's like both sides and different. It's like two sides of the same coin. One person is protecting his family. The other is trying to find revenge for her father. So it's same thing, kind of thing.
Yeah. So after this conversation, what we get is, so as I said, she doesn't believe him, and she kind of turns her back on him, and this is when Clint escapes, and we get all of this is still in the warehouse. We get a scene where he's kind of running through the warehouse here, and then he also fights her. So we get to see some of her awesome skills that she's collected. She's also, so like, in addition to being deaf, she also has like a prosthetic leg as well. So we saw that in the montage at the beginning. So he tries to kick her in her leg, and it's solid metal, and then she kicks him in the side of the head and knocks out his hearing aid, and crushes it. So they tussle for a bit, and then he gets his bows, and he starts to this scene with him in the bow and arrow was pretty cool. Like him doing some of these shots, like him shooting from behind the back, like that. This guy
Right.
behind, but it's kind of like the Batman thing where there's someone coming behind him, and you think they're going to get him, and he just like puts his hand up and like punches them in the back. It's kind of
right.
It's kind of like that. He shoots someone behind him without looking, which he's done it before in the movies. He knows someone is coming, and based upon his I guess hearing the person, he's able to shoot the person. We also see some cool action from Kate in this scene as well. She swings around this pillar to knock out the interpreter, which was pretty cool also.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most amazing action scenes when she did that move there. This move right here.
Yeah.
It's just really really amazing. The action, where he's, using the arrow, the bow and arrow going in the back. That's pretty awesome in terms of amazing stuff that happened throughout the episode. I think that I would say the Falcon Winter Soldier did pretty well as well with some of the ones on the truck, but this was right up there, I think, in terms of cool action sequences that happened. We saw a little bit of this in Age of Ultron when he was running around and killing all the robots, and also killing was the Baron Strucker's men at the beginning of Age of Ultron. But it was kind of
sorry, your
five other characters.
It was kind of sorry. Your audio cut out,
and so it was nice to kind of have. Yeah,
your audio cut out.
It's kind of nice to have.
You said Baron Strucker, and then your audio cut out a little bit. What were you saying?
Oh, so this reminds me of the scenes with him fighting against Baron Strucker, and then from there it was just really fascinating, the moves that he was making in that film. But this was much more proactive, much more enhanced type of action scene for Hawkeye himself to kind of showcase his skills. So I really, for those that are Hawkeye fans, having a great action scene is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I have to say that I'm very impressed with the cinematography during the whole action sequence, from the warehouse to the car scenes. I'm thinking, like, especially inside the car, where they did a whole 360 there, in action, from driving to attacking the bad guys behind them. I'm thinking, like, whoa, whoever does the cinematography must really have steady hands there. But one thing I appreciate, as you said, Colin, is that because we've seen Hawkeye in the behind the scenes kind of thing in every movie, from Thor, Avengers, and everything, but never a full on action scene with just him alone. So, which is very appreciative to see what else he can do and everything. Which is what the whole point of the show is, to show more in depth about him. Hence, that as a bonus, we get to see more action scenes of him and how he does in his situation and stuff like that. So it's really appreciated that, and I really admire the cinematography they did, that he captured the action scenes, that they don't cut, they don't try to do some suave camera action for it, though, just so we can make it look cool. They just a straight on the point right there, which is very awesome. I really admire that a lot.
Yeah, the coverage of the fight between him and her in Echo is really good, because I actually rewatched that like 3 or 4 times to see if they were going to do a bunch of cuts, and they don't. They do some cuts. There are some cuts in that thing, but in that scene, but a lot of it is like straight on. You can see the action, and they're not cutting away too much of that. I appreciate it. I appreciate the action direction there. So they then escape the warehouse, and they get in the car, and then there's as David said, there's a car chase scene where we get a 360 view of them in the car, and Kate starts shooting some of these trick arrows and blowing up things, which was pretty cool to see. So what did you guys make of these scenes?
I think for me, it reminded me a lot of, with the 360 turnaround shots of him driving backwards and things like that. It reminded me of the movie Baby Driver. It's one of my all-time favorite movies, because just the car chases are just spectacular. They're just breathtaking. And it reminded me a little bit of that, and just someone is able to replicate that was pretty good. And just her amazement at the trick arrows that coming from Clint was also just priceless. You saw that in the trailer. She's like, holy crap, and it's just like, it's just the thrill of her not playing hero, but trying to be a superhero. Mm-hmm. You can see it in her acting. So it was really, you felt, as an audience member, you felt that you were almost Kate Bishop in that way. You're fighting alongside an Avenger, and you're holding your own, and also like you're really doing great in all these car chase scenes. Getting out, coming out of the car window, and like spinning around, and then looking down and saying, "Oh, are these trick arrows? I can't believe it. I can't believe it's that. There's more dangerous arrows than that." So. Mm-hmm. It's all well done. The humor, the action scene, the stunt work, the acting behind it. It's pretty much all there in that small sequence. And again, it's just the car chases are just amazing. Just like the skill, the driving skills is amazing. I think that Marvel kind of dropped the ball when they kind of fired Edgar Wright earlier, because he's brilliant. I mean, you've seen a lot of his stuff. I mean, he directed Baby Driver, but you've seen a lot of his stuff, and I think that was one of the major unforced errors that they did when they let him go for Ant-Man.
Yeah. So at the end of this car scene, where we end up is a bridge where there's a bit of a standoff because there's traffic on the bridge, so they can't get past the people on the bridge, so they have to stop, and they make a bit of a stand there, and then we get some Pym tech here.
Batman, yeah.
Yeah, so Kate shoots a regular arrow, and then Clint hits the arrow in midair with this Pym arrow, which enlarges the arrow and destroys the thing. That was actually a pretty cool. That was a pretty cool scene. The giant arrow. The giant arrow.
Oh yeah.
That was a surprise. I was thinking, what the shit? So
yeah.
I don't know which was more surprising, that or random USB arrow, which I'm like, why is it using USB arrow?
So we did see him use a USB arrow in Avengers, if you remember. That's how he threw when he was controlled by Loki. He shot that USB arrow into the helicarrier to get information.
Oh.
Yeah, to like shut down one of the engines, I think, or something like that, to crash the helicarrier. So so we've seen the USB arrow before, but yeah, it wasn't very effective against like a foe. It has a very specific use case. So yeah, we see them jumping off. This is also part of the trailer. They jump off the bridge. And then he uses the grapple, which he used in Avengers as well, and also at the beginning of this series, we see this grapple thing to jump on the top of this train to escape.
Mm-hmm. And then she mentioned that. Oh, now I know what. There's a second thing with this plunger arrow.
The plunger arrow, yeah. All right, so then we get into the third act, which is basically the slow part, like of the episode. So there's some parts at the beginning of this which is fine. They're on the train and they're talking about. I think he gives her a compliment and says that you're really good at. You might be one of the best archers in the world. It's not just bragging, but he can't hear anything because his hearing aid is broken. And they have this conversation about like the dog and things like that. So that's what happened in that scene. They don't really have a conversation because they're talking past each other because he can't hear anything. Like as bad as his, I was talking to my wife about this earlier. As bad as his hearing probably was when they were in the car, it's probably even he can probably hear nothing in the subway. The New York City subways, there's a lot of rattling going on. So, so then we jump to the apartment, and this is the other scene where I think was very touching about how they kind of bonded together, right? He can't hear, and she's compensating for the fact that he can't hear by basically writing out messages from his youngest son, because he's awake and he's restless and he's calling his dad, and she's interpreting for him. So this was actually pretty sweet. It was a good I guess scene with the deaf or his deafness, but also to show that her caring and her empathy here as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really reminded me of Morgan and Tony. Morgan being Tony Stark's daughter. Mm-hmm. Some of those scenes that were from Endgame, which were really, really touching. You ever have a family and have a child, mm-hmm. you kind of can empathize with that. And so I think that this is really heartfelt and touching because of the fact that he knows that his namesake came from Quicksilver. So he at a very young age, Nathaniel really understands how his role as a superhero, as an Avenger, mm-hmm. and by the same token, he did this as his dad. He wants his dad to be there for him. So I think that's definitely a good kind of understanding on his part, a level of maturity for a very, very young child to realize that his dad's not going to be there.
Yeah.
But he definitely wants him to be there for these family moments.
Yeah, he's named after two heroes, right? His first name is Nathaniel, but is it his like middle name Petro because of Petro? Or?
Yes.
Yeah. So he
thinking, wait a minute, he was named after Black Widow.
Yeah. His name is the Nathaniel. His Nathaniel Petro Barton. I think.
Barton.
Yeah. Because I mean, yeah, he's had two heroes that he's named after who sacrificed their lives for the greater good. So yeah.
Correct.
So yeah.
Can I just bring up one thing? There was a scene, back to the scene in the diner. They were talking about we talk about discussing how they're gonna
infiltrate. Yeah, the scene of the diner is right after the.
Oh, it is? Okay, I think I'm really far ahead of myself. There's a scene in the diner there where they're talking about both sides of their stories and everything. Like Cade's finding out what the hell's going on with this what's his name again? The fiance of his mother.
Jack.
Thank you, Jack. Who is also known as Swordsman.
Mm-hmm.
And then while he's talking about trying to figure out how to take out the tracksuit mafia.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's so funny that she was talking about how to create their branding.
Yeah, I'm gonna get
and
to
it. And it shows a 1952 drawing of this costume with the H and everything. I was like, oh my goodness, they actually brought it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. We have some images of that later in a bit. But before that, we actually get a scene back at the warehouse between Maya and her interpreter, whose name let me see if I have his name here. His name is, let me see.
I don't think his name was mentioned at the
time.
No,
it wasn't mentioned, but it's in the credits.
The actor's name is Fra Fee.
Fra Fee?
Yeah, Fra
Fee.
Is that
Fra Fee? Yeah, it's the two words. Yeah.
That's the actor's name. No. Fra Fee is Kazi.
Oh, Kazi.
Kazi is so. This is Enrique. The actor's name is Carlos Navarro.
Okay.
So this character is Enrique. So this is where we get a mention of Uncle again, and he's trying to pull her back from, and he's questioning her, the way that she handled the Clint and Kate situation, and she's like, well, who's in charge? And so I think she's going to doggedly go after Clint because she wants that revenge. She wants to avenge her father. So I don't know. Do you think Clint makes it out at the end of this episode? He has two very strong women coming after him. With Yelena's going to show up. Yelena's going to show up in the next 4 episodes, I think.
Oh, she is going to show up. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then we have her wanting him dead as well. So like Yelena is more of like a misunderstanding, although I guess he could have fought harder to kill himself, but whatever. But he definitely killed this woman's father, so it's not a misunderstanding at all. I don't know. I mean, part of the reason that this show is called Hawkeye, both of these characters, Clint Barton and Kate Bishop, have had that moniker before, so he doesn't necessarily have to make it to the end of the show for there still to be a Hawkeye. So I don't know. I don't know if he makes it out of this show alive. That'd be really sad because he has like 3 kids.
Exactly.
But
I don't think they'll do that to him, and I think that would be a bad disservice to like have a father. I mean, but they did do it with Morgan, so Morgan Stark. So I don't know. I mean, but that's
I don't know. Morgan Stark was young, and that was one child. He has 3 children. I mean, I don't know.
Two of them are teenagers almost. I mean, I don't know.
It's true.
And plus, we don't know. I mean, because in the comic book, like Tony Stark does have a son, so we don't know yet. But that we, like you said, Colin, that we have the service to all the fans, Hawkeye fans, saying they killed Barton off. At least write him off and like. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Could be, I mean, even like Jeremy Remy, like who just did an interview with the Tonight Show, says when he first started like in Marvel Universe, he said this, and I quote, "I swore I would never do this. I would never keep playing this character when I'm 50 years old." And he's 51. He's still playing the character right now. So, but he said he's enjoying it though. Just like Tom Holland, he's announced he's gonna do another trilogy of Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, but so, I think they're both. I think they're both close to the end of. They're closer to the end of what them playing these characters than the beginning, because Tom Holland also said he doesn't want to be playing this character when he's 30. So they might have signed him up for. I mean, that might have been him negotiating for a better contract, but I also think as an actor you want to play more than one role because you're an actor. Mm-hmm. You're not one of you're not a character actor. You want to stretch and play more things. And at a certain point, it doesn't really matter how big of a check they write for Tom Holland. He's going to want to do other things, and I think that's kind of the same thing with Jeremy Renner as well. We talked about this last week. And every movie after the Avengers, he's technically retired, but like, he gets pulled back. So I think what they'll probably do if they don't kill him is actually let him really retire and not like wheel him out to be back, because I think he was retired he was retired after Avengers Ultron is when he retired. So
supposedly,
but he came back for Civil War, and then he was pulled, and then he was retired at Infinity War, and then he had to come back in Endgame. So like, let's see him if he actually retires this time. Yeah. So yeah, after this, we get the scene in the diner, as you said, David. And the scene in the diner, we get just before that, we see them going to get the heronade fixed, and then after that, we get the scene in the diner where Kate is because this is her hero, and she's annoyed that other people love the other Avengers more than this Avenger. So she's talking to him about branding, and then she draws this picture of him with the H on his head from the 60s. So yeah, it's that was pretty funny. I forget what else. So like, because these three scenes, this is the part of the episode that I said that dragged. So. And like, as I said, I'm going to blame the writers for this. They backloaded this episode with a lot of exposition and them talking to each other. And the directors did what they could. They basically broke up this conversation into 3 parts. Part of it is them talking in this diner, and then them talking in a cab, and then, them talking in this diner, then talking and walking to the park and talking, and then talking in the cab. And then talking a little, and then there's the penthouse scene at the end. But it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of slow. I understand they're trying to get to know each other, but I think that the writers could have written this in a different way. Spread this around a little bit. It kind of screeched to a halt. Basically, after all the action at the beginning, the whole episode kind of screeched to a halt because basically we had one exposition scene after another, and the directors, when they came up with the shots, I think they just changed the locations to kind of give you something more visually interesting to look at, but it wasn't enough to break this up.
I find it is not necessary. They should have done everything in the diner and go straight to the last scene right there, because they were in the diner. They were discussing where Kate was talking about her mother's fiance Jack. And then also, Clint is talking about how to stop the tracksuits and the services and stuff like that. So they could have stopped right there and then jump to the scene where they go to the mother's penthouse, and then go from there. That way, it all makes sense because, like you said, they went to the cab, they went to the park. I'm thinking when I was watching, I had to watch it twice. I'm thinking like, why are you guys repeating yourselves what you just said in the diner? Well, you could have just gone straight to the penthouse right there from the diner. Yeah. That way we know it's straight to the point. We know what's going on, and instead of dragging on. So yes, I agree with you, Nathaniel, about it's. I blame the director on this. Maybe the writer a little bit, because the writers should have known better that they're going to call themselves, do everything in the diner, and jump to the penthouse right there, because that's what the whole end up the end of the episode. So.
Yeah, so we get to the penthouse at the end, and he marvels at the fact. My wife was also talking about this. This is a ridiculous house to have in New York, and the only way you could have a house like this big in New York is how, like she said her great grandfather built a house. That's the only way you can have a house like this in New York, because this house is probably like $40-50 million easy.
Yep.
In New York.
Yeah,
in New York.
Definitely.
Yeah. So this penthouse house. So yeah, she's very rich.
I do have a question though, Nathan, is that whether or not this was the house first episode? Is
It
this
is.
the same
It
house?
is. It is
It's
the
the same one.
It's
So
the
it's
same
in Midtown. It's in Midtown, near the Avengers Tower.
Yeah.
Yes,
It'll be 40 or 50,000, 40 or 50 million dollars. This house. Yeah. So yeah. Then they use her mother's security company resources to find out that Kazi, which is the big guy who's second in command, he works for Sloan Limited. I guess that will come up later on because Hawkeye says that sounds familiar, but he's not really sure why it sounds familiar. So yeah, that'll show up later on, and then we get the last scene with Jack, with Jack putting Jack putting Ronin's sword to Hawkeye's throat. So that's where we end at the end of the episode. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the episode. So what did you guys have any other, I guess, final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it's again pretty solid. I think the action scenes was really awesome. There are some really good tender moments throughout the episode. Just again, solid overall. Well, we'll see. I mean, it's kind of like a bridge episode in many ways.
Yeah, definitely is a bridge episode. Yeah,
we talked about this in Titans. We talked about this in What If, not What If, but like in Loki, WandaVision. We talked about these bridge episodes, and overall, we'll see how it all kind of ties together, and also where Maya Lopez is going to end up at the end, because again, like you said, we're gonna have a show with Maya Lopez in it in the future, and yeah, it just kind of opens up a lot of possibilities, and then how Galena goes into this equation as well, trying to find him, and how does she get into this, because frankly the timeline's kind of messed up right now, because if you've watched Shang-Chi, you've watched Eternals, you're gonna watch Spider-Man in about 3 weeks or so. The timeline is all kind of all over the place. So in my mind, I can't really even understand like where the timeline this is. But I know it's probably before Eternals, I would say.
Yeah, it's no. It's probably not before Eternals.
Really?
Eternals probably was first, because after Hulk blipped everyone back, that is what kicked off the emergence. So I think 7 days after that. Then after that, I think, is WandaVision, because that happens in then after that is Far From Home, because that happens in the summer. And then WandaVision happens in November or so. Then in Falcon and Winter Soldier, they in the first or second episode, Sam says that he's been working with the Air Force or whatever for 6 months. So I think that's even further. It's either the summer or it's probably the following year. I can't place Loki because Loki's all over the place in the timelines, because he's traveling through time. It's actually technically it's in the past is where Loki because it was in 2012. And then I don't know where you would place this one. I think Marvel will tell you. Actually, if you go to Disney Plus, they have, and you go to the Marvel section, they have each one of the shows and also the movies in chronological order. It's one of the lists that they have. So wherever they place that is where this is. So if you go to Disney Plus, click on the Marvel logo, and you'll see one of the streams is like Marvel Timeline. It'll show you where this is. I don't know where it is off the top of my head.
One other thing is that to keep in mind is that this is still in the Marvel timeline. We're in 2023. So This is 2023. We are in 2021 right now, currently.
Yeah.
So they are still 2 years ahead of where we are, and hopefully it will catch up, to where we are. We don't get to have like 2 years in the future and things like that. And also it's funny because it says present day, and it's like, well, present day for Marvel, right?
Yeah, no, it's not present. Exactly, it's not present.
Yeah,
so
that messes things up a lot too.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like kind of confused with the timelines. And to think, and if people have seen Eternals, there's a big celestial that's like in the middle of the ocean. Like, isn't that supposed to be more of a big deal? I would say it is, but yeah.
For when we stream again next week, I will look up what's showing up on the stream inside of Disney Plus. But until they drop Eternals on Disney Plus, you don't really know where it is, but based upon this is a small spoiler for Eternals if you haven't seen Eternals yet. Based upon the movie, when she said like it's going to happen in 7 days, it seems like it's like right after the blip. But we don't know. Mm-hmm. We won't know until they drop Eternals on Disney Plus where they place it, because I think they'll add it to that stream, and we'll find out. But next week when we talk about this, I'll make a note about where everything that has been dropped on Disney Plus where it lands chronologically. All right. Yeah. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? No. Anything else, David?
I'm just looking forward to see when Elena is showing up.
Yeah.
Because after the after credits scene of Black Widow, where Elena was visiting Natalia's grave, and then Contessa, aka Valentina Allegra de Fonte, told her I know this. I somehow remember the name. Anyway. Wow. But when she showed her who the real killer is, as you said, Nathaniel, it was a misunderstanding, because no one witnessed the death of Natalia except Red Skull and Clint Barton.
Clint, yeah.
Yeah. So she doesn't know that. They know everyone knows. Somehow the entire world knows that the Black Widow is dead, but they didn't know how she died. So I don't know. So we'll see what happens. So because we know what's going to happen, Elena's going to become. She in the comic book, she will become the next Black Widow. But I'm curious the confrontation. This will be the first meet between Elena and Bart and Clint. So we'll see what's going to happen there. Because I know that it's going to be tough for her, because maybe that Elena will remind Clint a lot of Natalia, because Elena and Natalia both grew up in the same Black Widow program. Mm-hmm. And of course, Clint worked with Black Widow. Mm-hmm. But the one thing I'm wondering, the one thing I did not, that Black Widow, I kind of hope that in Hawkeye or Black Widow, how did the Black Widow and Hawkeye first met? Because how it became so close.
Yeah, they talk about Budapest a lot, but you don't ever actually see it. So they mentioned they mentioned
hope that they talk about it, or they either talk about or show about it. I mean, hence that everyone would expect the Black Widow cameo, but that's out the drain. But we don't know that. But we'll see how it is. Maybe there'll be interaction. Maybe he'll reveal to Elena that how the Clint first met Natalia in the first place, and how they became to be close friends and everything.
Maybe. So, we will see. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Elena as well. So, anyway, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the next 4 episodes, because I want to see if Kingpin shows up, I want to see if Elena shows up, and I want to see how this thing with Maya is going to be resolved, because her father is very much dead. I don't know, maybe. So, the other thing in the comics is that whoever Uncle is, which in the comics is Kingpin, she's raised by Kingpin after her father dies, but Kingpin is the one who killed her father. Now, in the show, Kingpin did not kill her father. Her father was killed by Ronin. But maybe she doesn't know that her father's doing shady things, but I'm not sure how she wouldn't know that her father's doing shady things, because she grew up to do shady things. So we have to see how they're gonna square that circle. So, but yeah, definitely looking forward to the next episode. So catch us next week when we talk about this. We talk about the next episode. So we've talked about what we think, but we are interested to hear what you guys think. So please comment down below. Like and subscribe for more content like this, and we will see you next time. All right, bye. Thanks.